Hi everyone, welcome back to my little corner of the internet, and this is the last video of the year. Shocking. Anyway, let's get to it, and we're gonna talk about season 2 of Squid Game that just came out 3 days ago or something. I don't know. I finished watching it, immediately typed up my thoughts, and it's completely chaotic, but I want to talk about it, so let's do that. Okay, so spoiler alert for both season 1 and 2, because I'm not entirely sure how to talk about either one really without spoilers. So go watch the show if you want to watch the show and then come back. Or if you don't care at all and just want to hear me ramble, stick around. But let's do this. So I'm going to start by saying that I do not envy the creators of this show. Because you know how when a singer has like this massive hit and then everything rests on the next single to see if they're gonna be a one-hit wonder or if it's actually gonna be a career? It kind of feels like that with Squid Game. Season 1 came out of nowhere, really. It was completely unexpected. There were no expectations set for it, and it blew everybody's mind. It was the #1 show on Netflix for a pretty long time. Everybody's watched it. It was really cool, very interesting, had a lot of interesting things to say about society at large and our the desperation of humankind and all of that. And it did it in a very cool manner using deadly games. And of course, media took the wrong lesson from it and just took the deadly games part, and everybody started making their own Squid Games. And Netflix as well made the reality show Squid Game, and the biggest side eye known to man. I'm like, you didn't understand the moral of your own show, Netflix? Damn. But anyway, I do not envy the creators of the show. So season 2 had, I don't want to say big shoes to fill because it's not replacing the first one. It had to really put the outfit together to make a whole ensemble so that they would look sharp. Metaphors. So let's dive in. I think the season had a few pretty big weaknesses. And I feel bad for starting with a downer, but I kind of want to stress these because it's a big issue. The main one is actually a continuation from season 1, which is the weakest point of season 1 continued into season 2, and that is the police officer's plotline. It was unnecessary in season 1. It is even more unnecessary in season 2, and it's just kind of there. You can remove that entire plot from both seasons and nothing would change. It is so irrelevant, and I don't understand why it's there. Maybe season 3 will wrap it up, but at this point, if you haven't added anything in season 2, I am concerned. I don't think it was a big reveal that the police officer survived from season 1 after being shot, because I think everybody knew very much that no body, no crime, right? We didn't see him die. We saw him get shot. So clearly we all knew, oh yeah, he'll show up in season 2. It's fine. The problem is, it was boring in season 1 and it's boring in season 2, and it's just, what's the point? Very weird side plot. I don't get it. Whatever. Second issue. Season 2 really struggles with balancing treading familiar ground and paving a new path, or adding new elements. It's such a difficult balancing act, and I don't think it succeeded. I'm gonna dive into it a little more later, but just right now, there is a lot of smaller things that felt tired. My main little thing is the concept of having one of the creators of the games or a main organizer of the games participate in the games, and also both being the #1. In the first season, it's a huge shock. Again, there were no expectations set, but also the character itself became a really endearing character. We were rooting for them. And then the marbles episode happened, which was heartbreaking all around. And then we get the twist, and it was heartbreaking all over again. So then season 2, not only do we kind of tread similar ground by having another guy infiltrate the games and befriend our main hero, Mr. 456. This time we know who he is. It's just, I don't want to say pointless, because I guess it's an important factor, but I feel like if I was number 456 and I saw that I got number 456 again when I entered the games, again. And then number 001 starts to befriend me after number 001 befriended me before. I don't know if I would trust that number. That's some level of innocence and naivete, if you will, that I'm not so sure I buy. I don't, yeah. So I struggled with that. I feel like our hero trusting this person so completely and then getting betrayed by him is tired. It's been done by you the previous season. It reminds me of Prison Break. Season 1, incredible. You broke out of prison. Season 2, you get into prison again, you have to break out again. You're like, we've been here. How many times are you going to break out of prison, you know? It's the same thing. It's so very difficult situation. The other weakness that this season has is more an overall issue, which was pacing. I think that because we only got half a game this time around, as opposed to the whole, things felt both rushed and dragged. We saw a total of 3 games, I believe, and then a very, very long gun shootout thing, and something was definitely missing. I think the emotional impact of each game was very lacking compared to season 1, and I'm gonna dive into that again later. But just in general, I think that really threw off the pacing of this season. I do think, though, that we did get some very compelling characters, and which I guess is part of the reason I'm frustrated. I kind of wanted more of them. Slide aside, but having the most annoying character be played by the one and only T.O.P. from Big Bang was just hilarious. I'm not entirely sure what he was going for, but I truly appreciate the purple hair and the Infinity Stone colored nails, the whole Thanos vibe thing that he was trying to encompass, I guess, as like a rapper named Thanos. But in terms of the acting, I just think they went in and they were like, Top, be crazy. And you're like, got you. Completely insane. But funny enough, I think because of his craziness, he wasn't nasty enough in a way. I think the bad guys in season 1, like the antagonists, were more nasty. There were some really great characters. I think particularly the older mother was really fantastic. I really felt for her and her situation. Like, she's just trying to protect her son who keeps fucking up over and over and over again, even within this game where she's desperately trying to get him out. It's not working. And then we had the trans woman who, her story, she's a compelling character. Very human. Maybe, you know, people will get annoyed of the woke side of this, but I don't know. I thought it was a very pretty and tame and beautiful story to have. I suspect she will not survive season 3 because I feel like we put a lot of emotional baggage on her, but at the moment I think she's good. Other characters maybe less so. I feel like the whole Marine situation, I'm pretty sure the guy was just faking being a Marine the entire time, but that was unnecessary to me. The friend, our hero's friend, I don't know anybody's names and I don't remember their numbers, barely. There was not enough emotional connection for us in order to really appreciate the pain later on. Lee Byung-hyun being, you know, 001 is great actor, and he did his role very well. You can, even though I don't particularly like the twist of him, you know, being the character, that the infiltrating character, he played his part very nice. It's very easy to see he's likable and why people would gravitate towards him. So in that regard, that was great. Then you have all of these other side characters that some are supposed to leave an impact but don't, because again, we don't see enough. We have the father whose daughter is dying of leukemia, but I honestly did not recognize him until they flash back to him. I was like, oh, that's why we care about him. Okay. We barely see him in the show. He's just kind of this little dangling thing for our triangle character, which that is an interesting part, but I'll get back to her in a second. We have a few girls that kind of seem the same and have zero personality. We have the pregnant girl, we have the very, very shy girl, and then we have the piercing girl. And I don't like having a pregnant girl in there feels more like a shock factor than anything else, because she doesn't do much other than that. I thought it was interesting to have like her boyfriend also being there, well, ex-boyfriend I guess, and him being a YouTuber who promoted a crypto scam. I thought that was very timely. Interesting. So that was pretty cool. I was amused by that. And yeah, so like a lot of potential for good characters, but again, because the games were rushed and didn't have the emotional impact of the first season, we didn't get this huge connection with them. Not enough, at least for me. That's that. But back to our triangle character, when we first see her outside of the games, I was like, really? We're having another North Korean defector who's trying to save somebody from, like, find somebody within North Korea? Again, treading similar ground. It's the same story, but then having her actually be one of the snipers was a very interesting pivot. Her rationalization of trying to take people out of their misery, which is why she's ensuring, like, she's trying to prevent the organ harvesting illegal operation that's happening on the side, was interesting, but again, not enough. It's just kind of there. If you remove that plot point, nothing changes. And that's a really big issue for me, both with the police officer plot and with hers. They could be really interesting characters, but their plots are so detached from the main issue that they are completely irrelevant. That's unfortunate. Let's talk about some of the changes that the show did, because again, I mentioned, I think the struggle is real with like keeping old and adding new. It's a very tough balancing act, and I'm not sure that the season succeeded. As I mentioned, we got a couple of new games, and we also had this additional twist of the voting. And I want to talk about the voting system first. So in season 1, they had one shot of stopping the games. They had to vote, and if the majority voted to get out, the games would stop. Nobody would win anything, but they would just leave. And they did that. And that was, I think it was like episode 2, like very early on. After the first game, they voted to get out, everybody leaves, and then we see their struggles outside in the real world. Like all of their debts are coming back, all of this heaviness, the weight of the world, the desperation comes back. And so the majority of them choose voluntarily to go back to these deadly games, even though they just saw a bunch of people get brutally murdered. And I thought that was such a really clever way to play with the psyche of these people. They saw the horror there, but their lives are so bad that they're willing to risk their lives and more and risk other people's lives for the slim chance, the slim possibility of earning that huge amount of cash. And it's heartbreaking and it's impactful, and also allows the people who are willing to suffer through their lives to stay away. In the second season, our little twist is that after every game, there will be a vote. And if the majority votes to stay, they keep going. And if the majority votes to leave, they get the amount of cash that they won so far split equally amongst them. And that created a whole new psychological game. And I thought that was really interesting on one hand and had real issues on the other. So with the interesting part, we have this, because these people are extremely desperate, and a lot of them got into their debts because of gambling and poor choices, not just like bad luck. They're already very, very susceptible to bad decisions. And in this case, having this giant piggy bank above them with the money, they know how much money they can win if they stick it to the end. They know people have to die in order for them to get the money. They know their own debts. And then they know how much money they would receive if they quit. And so the difference between how much money they could receive now, guaranteed now, versus the potential of the big win causes this back and forth of whether they want to quit the games or continue. And people who make poor decisions, which we see actually in the first episode, with the homeless people choosing between bread and a lottery ticket. The potential of maybe getting something versus a guaranteed smaller thing is a very interesting thing to watch. So in that regard, I thought that was very interesting. On the other hand, there were two issues that bothered me. One, it's the having their votes plastered on their jackets. I thought that would have more of an impact, but it literally only came into play for the shootout. For our benefit, it made things easier when the leave team and the stay team started fighting. Before that, it really didn't matter. So that felt kind of like a throwaway. The other thing is the conductors of the game continually say that they are there of their own free will, that it's completely voluntary. But because it's majority rule, it is not voluntary. The people who voted to leave cannot leave. And the number of votes that prevent them from leaving is so small that I don't think it's fair. It's funny to say fair or not fair, but the games do try to keep some level of fairness, at least in season 1. So when you think of the season 1 voting, again, the majority chose to come back, but not all. And I think that's a really, really big difference, because the people who desperately wanted to leave in season 2 could not. And that bothers me. But what about you? Did you prefer the season 1 voting or the season 2 voting, and why? Please let me know. I'm very curious, because I do think it's such an interesting and important part of the game and the show itself. Now, as for the new games, let's first recap the games that we had in season 1. We had Red Light, Green Light, we had the Honeycombs, we had Tug of War, the Marbles, Hopscotch on like the glass ceiling, and Squid Game. The sets for each one of these games was extraordinary. It was fantastic. On top of that, each game had like an emotional weight to it. There was not just the tension of dying, but we learned more about characters. We learned about how they were trying to problem solve their way. The Marbles episode was gut-wrenching. We lost beloved characters in these games. It was very packed with tension and emotion. In season 2, we had Red Light, Green Light, a 6-legged race with the 5 mini games within it, and the mingle, grabbing people by their numbers and running into the rooms. The special game is not a game, it's a shootout. I don't count it. So we got way fewer games, and in those games we didn't really learn much about our main characters. I kind of felt robbed. The only time we had a main character actually die from those games was in the Mingle episode, and honestly, she was not important enough for me to care as much as they wanted me to care. It was sad. She was cute, but come on. Compare that with the Marble episode of season 1. Can't compare. It was just very empty, and that's unfortunate. Having said that, I still binged pretty much the whole thing in one go, so I can't say that I wasn't entertained or that I was bored at any point, but I do think it was really harder to relate to certain choices. And again, I'm not entirely sure how I feel about the fact that we know that player 1 is playing everyone. It feels very Greek tragedy in that the audience knows what's going on, and it's very like, no, don't run in that house, very horror movie-esque of don't do this, no, he can't be trusted, or waiting for him to betray them. I don't know how I feel about that. I was kind of annoyed by certain things. I was like, yes, of course, this is a person that betrays them. Yes, too much good from season 1 didn't get into season 2. I think that's basically the issue. I think for the most part, season 2 needs to be better than season 1. It's not unheard of. It's not a rarity. I think a lot of shows do that. Usually it's when writers kind of get in the groove of the show they're in, actors understand and embody their characters better. It's a natural progression, especially in situations like this where there's supposedly like a set story that the creator wants to tell. If it's not one of the a procedural or a sitcom where they just kind of keep going until they get cancelled, those ebb and flow. It's a pretty standard situation where one season might be better than the other. But when you have a show that has a full story set from the beginning, I expect the story to get better. And I don't think season 2 succeeded in that regard. And that is very unfortunate. But what do you think? Did you enjoy season 2 more than season 1? Did you even like either of them? Are you looking forward to season 3? How do you think this will wrap up? Let me know any and all of your thoughts in the comments below. And as always, thank you so very much for watching. Have a wonderful, happy new year. Take care of yourselves. Take care of your family and loved ones. And I'll see you guys next time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and do all the things. Bye.